But always want to thank you all for the amazing work that you're doing to care for our children. And we've got some updates, and then we have a special guest that's going to be sharing some really exciting information from DHS. So we will get started. Becky, if you can advance to the next slide. So, I always try to run through the numbers, gang. We have over 1,900 licensed programs that are open with the capacity to serve over almost 164,000 children. The positive cases since last March for children, it's 1,140. And for staff, it's 1,665, running pretty close to what we've seen throughout the pandemic, certainly more staff than children. We've expended out of the new funding. This is not the American Rescue Plan. This is the funding that we received in December. That was $119 million, but we've expended $41.6 million. I do know that we did maintenance payments last week, and Tom or somebody on his team can give an update about supplemental payments. I am getting some emails from programs trying to figure out what they've gotten. So I know that the maintenance payments went out last week and the week before. And I think Tom and them can update on the supplemental payments for voucher kids whenever they do their update. So I think that is it for me. I think our next person is Tom Shepard from Family Support. And I'm seeing a note from Ashley Green. So just watch the chat box, gang. The supplemental payments are being processed now for April. So just be aware of that.
Thank you. It's glad to see all of you or hear you. You can see our essential worker applications. The total that we have right now is 11,561 with 8,150 approved and 112 pending. We did have our public hearing via Zoom yesterday from 10 to 12. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of is that we have set up a email address specifically to receive comments on the state plan. So and that email is right there on the PowerPoint, the CCDF state plan comments at dhs.arkansas.gov. All comments that you want on the state plan must be received through that email for us to be able to answer them and consider them, because we have to respond or report how many comments that we've actually received. So be sure that you send those through that avenue for us. If you need a copy of the draft, and I want to emphasize that this is a draft, changes will be made on the state plan based on comments and inputs from providers and partners, et cetera, throughout the state. But this is our initial draft of that state plan. And if you want to view that, there is the web address where you can pull that state plan up for viewing. I encourage you to do that, read through there and make comments, as we want to do our very best to support our child care facilities across the state. Finally, there will be a memo that will be going out to all CCDF providers concerning pediatric first aid, the CPR requirement, because there is a slight difference between what the federal requirements are for those who participate in child care vouchers or the CCDF funds and our minimum licensing. The requirement for minimum licensing is 50% of those on site have to have their CPR certification. For CCDF, every direct caregiver, which is your teachers, your direct care, and your directors have to have that CPR certification. Licensing will be going out and reviewing that and reporting back to the family support on those issues. So just wanted you to be aware that you will be getting a memo via email that will probably be coming out tomorrow to everyone who is on the CCDF. And I remind you, this is a federal guideline that we must meet for those who are receiving CCDF. I don't know if Rachel has any more updates on the supplemental payments. I didn't see what Ashley put in the chat. Rachel, you have any additional updates?
I was just going to say, I know over the past year have keyed out several claims to your facilities, and I appreciate your graciousness during this time as we've been keying. Supplemental claims are presently being keyed into the system, and all providers who should have received a maintenance payment or who were set up as a vendor should have had that submitted to them over the last 2 weeks. So if you did not receive a maintenance payment and you believe that you should have, please be checking your email or give us a call to make sure that your vendor number and all of that is set up correctly in ACES. You are welcome to reach out to myself or Ashley Green regarding any claims that your facility might have received. And just a reminder that supplemental payments are done on a monthly basis, and the maintenance payments are to be expected quarterly.
There was a question that I seen Brandy answered in the chat about essential workers. Yes, they are considered CCDF funds that are paying for essential workers. And I seen a question on online for CPR. If you want to contact me at Thomas Shepard, thomas.shepard@dhs.arkansas.gov. Rachel, if you put that in the chat for me, I appreciate that. Or anyone from family support will be happy to help you out with that. And I'm not sure who's next, Tanya, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tom. Becky, if you can go ahead and advance. Our special guest today is our very own DHS communications person, Amy Webb. For those of you that don't know Amy, she is always out on the front lines for DHS. But she has some exciting news that was announced from the agency this week. It's not from the Division of Child Care, but it's from another part of our agency. But we thought you might have families and or staff. And Amy's going to talk us through the rent relief announcement that went out yesterday. So Amy Webb, I'm going to give it to you.
Hi, thank you, Tanya, for having me. I appreciate it. So as Tanya said, I'm Amy Webb. I'm Chief of Communications and Community Engagement at DHS. And on Monday, we launched the Arkansas Rent Relief Program. And we did think you guys were perfect group of people to talk to about this, because your staff may need some assistance, or your families, and you know your families really well, and you probably know the ones that are struggling. And so this is really designed for them. So the rent relief program, can y'all see my screen? I didn't ask that beforehand.
Yes, Amy, we can see it.
Okay, great. So the rent relief program is part of federal funding that was provided to the state to help people who are struggling with rent and utilities because of the pandemic. So Arkansas received $173 million for the state program. And I'll talk in a minute a little bit about a couple of the county programs. And we launched it yesterday, and people can apply for help paying their rent, overdue rent back to April 1st of 2020, and future rent. And they can get a total of 15 months paid through this program, and also utilities that are currently due. So I'm going to walk through a little bit about the eligibility. So this is for renters, so it's not people who have mortgages, it's not commercial businesses, it is specifically for renters. And people qualify if someone in their household is qualifying for unemployment, or their household income has gone down, or they've incurred significant financial hardship due to the pandemic. Either, it could be medical, it could be childcare, things like that, and they're income eligible. And what's unique about the eligibility for this program as it relates to income is that it's not based on federal poverty level, which is what most of us are familiar with for programs. Instead, it is based on the area median income and household size for that county. So there is a chart on our website that has that for every county in Arkansas, because it's different in every county. It's based on census data. So I'm going to just walk you through a couple things of what's covered and what's not. So unpaid rent and ongoing rent, unpaid utility bills, we will pay some late fees if they're outlined in a lease, but not all. So 5% of the total overdue rent. This money does not go for telephone bills, cable bills, broadband at this time. It does not reimburse for bills that are already paid. And it does not cover mortgage or commercial, like I mentioned. So it really is focused on housing stability for lower income Arkansans who are renting. And the big thing that people need to know is that in addition to the state program, the 3 counties qualified for their own program. And so the way that it'll work is those counties also got a specific allotment of funding. And so when people in those counties, which are Benton, Pulaski, and Washington, need assistance, they need to apply directly with the counties. And once the counties exhaust all their funding, then we will step in and support applicants in those counties after that. But all of this is on our website. And we have a short and simple web address for you, which is ar.gov/rent relief. It has the links to the counties. People can apply online at that site. And there's also guides for tenants, guides for landlords. And that is another important thing for people to know. Tenants are not the only ones who can apply. Landlords also can apply. And then we work to match up tenants and landlords because both have to participate in order for the payments to go out. And lastly, payments will go out directly to the landlords or directly to the utility companies. So again, the goal of this program is about housing stability. And for these individuals, that means we want to get the money directly to the people who it is to whom it is owed, so that we know they have safe, stable housing. So what we ask of you guys is to share this information with people who you think might need it, the families that you serve, and again, your workers. And we can provide some flyers and other information to Tanya and her team, and they can share it with you all if you're interested and you want that. But really, this is just our effort to get the word out. This is a lot of money that we have, but we also know that the estimates through the census are about 50,000 people, or 50,000 households rather, may be eligible for this program. So there's a lot of work to do to get the information out to people who need it. And that's where you guys can step in. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm sorry if I talked really fast. So. Can you put the website in the chat box? Yes, I will do that now.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you all. If you have questions for Amy while she's on, please put them in the chat box. I know that somebody said they'd love to have a flyer, so maybe that's what you've put in, but if there are flyers that we can get out to our childcare providers and or clients, we would be happy to do that. So website is on there. Amy's put that on. I do see some notes from folks. The relief funding, gang, is from the federal government. So just let me point that out. This is not funding that our agency solicited. It's what the government has given us. And so they determine the purposes. So it is designed for people, families, and who are unable to pay their rent. So it's for our clients. So unfortunately, it's not designed for childcare providers. But appreciate you for putting those comments in. And Amy, thank you so much. I know Mary Franklin's on the call, who works in our Division of County Operations and is our fearless leader there, who is helping and responsible for all of this funding. So Mary, I don't know if you want to add anything, but if you have anything you want our folks to know in childcare and early childhood ed, please feel free to chime in with Amy.
Amy did a great job. I don't have anything to add. I will say I did see a question come through the chat about the Benton County information, and I'm putting that in the chat right now, how to connect with the Benton County. HARC, the organization called HARC up there is helping with the application process, and I put their link in the chat for you. But
Thank you.
thank you all for listening and learning about this program, and definitely appreciate your help sharing the information with those that you may know who need it. Appreciate you very much.
Thanks, Mary. And just want to point out, Rita Neve, yes, this is for clients and staff and people in your community that might be eligible. Maybe you have a family member, or maybe you know someone. So please feel free to share this with anybody that you think might be eligible. We're just trying to get the information out. The funding is available in our state through our agency, and we just wanted to take the opportunity to share it with our early childhood colleagues. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop right there. I'm trying to just check the chat, gang. I did see a few questions. Yes, there was a question about essential workers. So yes, as a reminder, we are working on the funding that we received in December. And so we're continuing to add and continuing to serve essential worker families. If your families are keyed through June, you'll start to see those for essential workers go through December. We will start keying those through December, but we are continuing to take applications. As Tom pointed out, we have adequate funding. Until further notice, we will continue to add. So just be aware of that if you're serving essential worker families. We do have adequate funding, and we will continue to add until such a time that we have utilized or at the point that we can no longer add families. So appreciate that. That is really it for us on updates, gang. I'm trying to watch. We do have maybe 2 items. We talked about this last time, and I apologize, gang. I did not look at it carefully, but Becky Mitchell, who's on this call, and others have been working on updating the pandemic guidance. Remember last time we reminded you or let you know that those are no longer requirements. It is now just guidance. And I realized that there were a lot of things on there that still said should or shall. So we've tried to get that cleaned up, and we'll be posting it on the website probably later today. So if you've been reading it and been confused about it, just know that we've tried to get all of the language to May. Those are just guidelines for your programs. Please know that you are following your regular minimum licensing standards now, which cover many of the things. We do know that some programs wanted to keep some of those things in place. I do want to let you all know that we in this agency this week were instructed that the mask and screening would end for DHS. That was in place through last Friday. But we have advised our licensing staff and monitoring staff and nutrition, or anyone that's coming out from DHS Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Ed, if your agency is continuing to require mask and screening, my staff will submit to whatever your requirements are. So please know that. We've let our staff know that. We want to be respectful of your business and your practices. So if you are continuing to keep some of these things because children can't be vaccinated and you're trying to keep things safe in your facility, we want to respect you for that. And we'll make sure that our staff are carrying masks with them and are using them if that's something that you all want. So please let them know whenever they're coming to do routine monitoring, if that's something that is required in your organization, and we will respectfully follow your guidance on that. And watch out for the updates. It's probably down to about a page now, gang. We've taken a lot of things out. So I'm just trying to go through some of the questions, and maybe staff are answering. If you have essential workers, I see a question. Jennifer, thank you. That's a great question. Unfortunately, we cannot put families on hold that are essential workers. If they're not going to use it, we have to be using this for families who are working. So we will continue, to serve families. I don't think that's going to be a problem for you, however, because we have $178 million that we haven't even started using yet. So please know that if you have some families and you're going through to stop services this summer. Maybe you're in a school. There shouldn't be any problem with getting those families added back in August. We have adequate funding. The funding is eligible through 2024. So just want to make sure you're aware of that, but we can't hold for the essential workers. We can for regular vouchers, we can suspend those. I think we do that periodically for different reasons, but for essential worker families, that is intended for working families like now, but shouldn't have an impact on you in the fall when you start back. A great question, and I don't, maybe Brandy, somebody's answered the question about how easy is it to get a sibling. You just need to submit a form that, or submit an app for that, for adding it. If we already have them, it'll probably be pretty simple, but Brandy, if you have any additional comments, that you feel free to put them in the chat box or make those if you can unmute yourself.
Sure, I can update you on that. It's in the chat box, but it's fairly easy to add a child to your childcare case. So the one thing I would encourage you to do is reach out to your case manager because they can walk you through the entire process. But all they need to do is submit an application for that new child and one of the childcare provider forms that you all are already very familiar with, and we can get that child added.
Thanks, Brandy. Appreciate that. I know you guys are trying to put the answers in the chat box and I may miss them, so please feel free to do that. And please keep your questions coming. I do see one, if someone is expecting, my understanding is the baby has to be born. We do have to have information about that baby. That's a federal child care rule. So, but if they're an existing family, it's just adding that new baby to their application. So it should be pretty simple. I want to talk a little bit, see a couple of questions about the new funding, the American Rescue Plan Act funding. So I think I announced on our last call, we did receive the official notice of award, like right before that call. We have just received the guidance for part of it, for a portion, last week, guys. So we are still sorting through. It is a lot of money, as I've mentioned to you all, and we are still getting the guidance from the federal government. I can tell you some things that were shared with us. We cannot use this funding, just like we can't use regular child care development block grant for building, for construction, or major renovation. And they do have definitions. And as we get closer into, now we can start spending it, because we're not even there yet. I'm just giving you some very early high-level information about what we do know. It can be used for minor renovations, and minor renovations for them, would be something like bathroom, commode, sinks. It can be used for HVAC. If you think about that from a standpoint of COVID, making sure that your air system is up to date and is better for both staff and children. So there are some minor things that we can do with the funding, but the major things, it cannot move a building. It can't move anything inside the building. All of that's considered major. So walls, all of that is considered major. And that's a federal definition and a federal requirement. But Tom and I were on a call with the feds last week on the guidelines, and that was reiterated by the team, and it's in the guidelines that it cannot be used for major renovation construction. It can only be used for minor things. So we will, as we get approval and permission, we'll be sending this out and talking about it on the call. We do not have much more than that. I've shared with you, we do want to focus on infant and toddler opportunities, so existing programs that can expand. Remember, if you're having to build, you're going to want to partner with somebody or try to find somebody who has funding for that, because we can't use this for that. So if you have a space that you're not using, maybe you can expand into a space that's existing, but it doesn't allow us to build new space. I am aware there are some people around the state that may be interested, maybe philanthropic groups. Think about foundations. They may have an interest and may have funding for the building portion, or maybe you can look around in your community and there's a vacant building, but it cannot be used for any major construction or major renovation. And we will be, you all will be getting it as soon as we have the approvals. We are in the very, very early stages. And as I mentioned, we've only used 40 million of the 119. So we still have about $70 million on the previous grant. So we're not we're not going to rush to this. We're going to go through the process. There is a state process. We have to get legislative approvals, and they only meet whenever they decide to meet. It's usually monthly, but we'll be going before them to get all those permissions and approvals over the next couple of months as we are allowed to do that. My guess is nothing will be pushing out from the American Rescue until probably August, September. So just be aware of that. That's a great question, Debbie, about can it be used for items that are already purchased or for going forward? We will take that into consideration. I think there would be a time limit because the grant wasn't enacted, but we might be able to do something, from that point of the grant, but it can't go back like past, I think March 11th or 12th of this year. So it has to be within that time frame. And it would have to meet their definition of items that are approved. And again, we'll be getting all of that information as we work with the feds and get their guidelines. So I don't want to get too down in the weeds on that since we don't really have permission and approvals yet. It's out on their website, so you can go see what they've put, but we as a state have to get permission and approval to even use the money. So right now we're spending the 119 million. Kelly, thank you. I saw that note about an individual who's been exposed. I'm assuming that's what you're responding to. So for the person who asked the question about can a person continue to work? If they have not been vaccinated, they would need to quarantine. The recommendation is still 14 days, but if they have no symptoms, they can quarantine for 10 days. You can call the call center. Kelly's over there today, so she's typing in the chat box, but you can call the call center if you have questions about that. Thank you, Tesla, Grogan. Those are federal definitions, so I can't expansion. We have lots of programs that have space, so people can expand into space. I can't dictate to the federal government how they choose to put their funding resources out, and so the building is their rule and their law, not mine. Yes, Ms. Boylan, that materials for infants and toddlers, cost for utilizing a room. Maybe you have a space and you're wanting to utilize a room, we can do startup costs. Those would all be eligible. That's really when I'm talking about expansion, it would be for startup costs. Those are normally things that we don't pay for those of you who have worked with us for a long time, but those are things that we could pay for with this new funding. So be aware, we will get more information out as we get details from the federal government because it is their funding. So I apologize for not being able to give you all the details. We just simply don't have it from the federal government yet. And so we're just getting the initial guidelines. I will tell you the guidance from the December money came about 2 weeks ago. So it's not coming really as quickly as we would like for it to. And again, we are spending down the 119 million. So we have funding. It's not like we don't have money. We are processing payments. We are getting all of that funding to you all in the maintenance payments and supplemental payments and your regular essential worker and your regular voucher payments. So, and thank you so much for, putting your comments in. We do appreciate that. I would point out, I know I didn't look at the number today of how many's on the call, but some people need toilets. Some people may need certain things. So I know some of you are going to need different things. So just all be aware that when you have almost 2,000 people, everybody's going to have different needs. And we're going to try as best that we can with this new money to account for all of that, to give you all some flexibility. Once the federal government releases their guidelines, then we're going to try to our very best ability to give you all the funding and give you the categories that the federal government has issued to us. And I think you'll have some flexibility, and it will give those of you who need certain things the ability to do those things and give other folks the opportunity to use it for the things that they need. So be thinking about that. It's one-time money. It's not ongoing funding. So it will be one time. So there are two sources of funding right now, and I'm going to give you both. The one that we are spending today, where we're paying for essential workers, and we just processed the maintenance payment last week, and we're working on the supplemental payment. That one is from December, and it has a big long name, but it's Consolidated something Act. The feds call it an acronym, CRSA, CRSSA. I don't like acronyms. I'm calling it COVID relief funding from December. That is the funding that we're currently using. The one that we are talking about that's sort of like, we don't have all the details yet, and it's the big bucket of money that was passed in February by the current administration. That one is the American Rescue Plan Act. I believe the president signed it March 11th or 12th officially. So that one, we don't have all of the information. We don't have approvals yet. So as we have these calls, and we are having these calls every 2 weeks, we will be giving you updates as we get them. I don't want to be confusing about that, but we really simply don't have all of the details. We have very limited information. We have the notice of award. So I'll give you that. I told you guys last time, we have 178 million for essential worker families. Can't be used for anything else, only for essential worker families through 2024. The other funding is called stabilization, and it can be used for a number of things, and that is 286 million. We are just getting guidance about that funding. And so as we get the details and then we get permission in our state to use that funding, we will be letting you know on this call. If you have ideas, please feel free. You have Tom's email, who's over our child care program. You can send it to me, you can send it to Ashlyn, you can send it to your licensing staff, anybody that you're working with in the division, and we'll get it to the staff that are going to be working in this area. We certainly want to hear from you, but do know that the federal government are the ones that are making the decisions about, in general, how it can be used. We will take that and try to go from there and get more definite information to you all, but they do have some preliminary guidelines out. We're just waiting on final details, and then we're waiting on our state's process, and we are not quite there yet. So those are the two funding sources, American Rescue Plan Act, and then the COVID relief funding from December. Last thing I want to talk about is I have an amazing team, and they've worked really hard this past year, and I just want to applaud them. I know sometimes they don't get the recognition. We did a lot of things last year, and from my licensing staff and regulatory background check staff, nutrition team, Better Beginnings team, just our family support team that processed so much funding, and just an amazing team. I just want to say thank you to the team. And I appreciate those of you who send really kind notes. I don't always get the kind notes. We're usually dealing with the other side of the house. So we really appreciate when you notice the hard work, and they're all very committed, and they've all been very busy. So I just want to give a shout out to them and just thank them for, getting us through the past year and a half. That was really quite a struggle. I think there's some real exciting opportunities as we go forward, and I just want to thank them for that. I do want to say, I know many of them are on the call, and they know me and they know how I am. If you are having difficulty with any of the staff or a challenge, please know that they are going off the best information they have at that time and in that moment. And we would definitely want to know to help sort through anything. So please reach out to us. If you think there's a concern, we would definitely want to know that and work with our staff. We do hire new staff and who may not have all the information. And, like all of you, there are definitely opportunities and days when we all wake up just a little crankier than the day before. And it might not be our best day, but we all try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And I just want to thank my staff for doing that every day and being professional. So, but please let us know if there is any problem or difficulty. I'm checking the chat box. Yes, the relief funding can be used to pay for an audit. It can be used to pay for anything that your organization would pay for normally to help you remain operational. And if it has pushed you up over that threshold, which for some it may have, you can definitely use that to pay for your audit in your organization. So, great question. And we do plan to keep these calls. Guys, we probably are getting to a point where we're going to go to monthly, but I'm going to keep 2 weeks. We'll have one in 2 weeks, but we definitely are thinking that we will go to a monthly call. I'll be honest, folks, a lot of folks think we're out of this pandemic. So And I'll just tell you personally, I have 5 family members right now who have COVID. So for me, it's very real still, very, very real. 5 members of my family, very close members, by the way. And so for me, it's still very real. And I just urge you to stay safe. We've lifted a lot of things. You have all the power and authority to do the things that you need to do to keep your facility and the children that you serve and the families that you serve safe. Keep my family in your prayers, but I just appreciate you all so much. I saw a note, Jennifer, question about DHS rules changing. The pandemic guidelines have changed. They've gone from requirements to guidelines, and we're updating the website. So that may have been what you heard. We are not planning on changing any rules immediately. There are some things that passed in the legislative session. I don't think any of them necessarily are going to apply to childcare licensing. There is one for our placement residential side of the house. They will be doing some rule changes, but I don't think we'll be promulgating any new rules in childcare. And Ashlyn, feel free to type in the chat box to confirm that. And then, oh, yes, Jennifer, thank you. Appreciate Jennifer for just continuing to ask. Yes, there are things in the Child Care Development Block Grant federal requirements that we have notated. And if I believe, Tom, and somebody please correct me, I believe it has to do with if you're keeping infant toddlers, that you have to have infant toddler CPR training, but my team can correct that. And that is something that has been pointed out to us. I think we have CPR training requirements, but there's some language about infant CPR and first aid. So we are definitely working with you guys to get all of that in place. So if Tom, if you want to type anything, or if Brandy or anybody wants to type that in the chat box. Yes, thank you, Anne-Marie. No updates on the infant toddler yet. We're still working on guidance from the feds. And it is pediatric CPR. So Jennifer, that's the note. If you're keeping infants, it's for pediatric CPR. And no promulgation on the childcare side. So no rule changes there. I think that's it, gang. It is 12:39. If there is nothing else, we will give you guys back 21 minutes of your day and look forward to our call next week or 2 weeks from today. And that will be, I think, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, if I'm not mistaken. So June 1st. We'll talk to you then. And then we'll probably talk about on that call, since we're going, I know we all are still working here. We're going into summer, but we may go to just once a month. And we'll see how that works maybe, but we're going to keep 2-week call, and then we'll kind of talk about that then. Would love to hear from you guys. If you think once a month is sufficient, you know, if you want to send us a quick email, that would be helpful. I don't want to take away a call that's important to you all, and we definitely want to keep doing this. We think this is way important and a great way to connect. So we're going to keep doing it beyond the pandemic, but we do think we might be ready to go to once a month, and that way we wouldn't be tying up 2 Tuesdays a month or more. I think that's it, gang. Thanks. Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.